So moving on, we have the JavaSpring project, which takes the good work that's been done in refining and articulating um, the details of the energy usage information representation and the use cases that have been described in the NASB standard, and move those forward to an implementation in Java underneath a Tomcat server. We have a full implementation of the data custodian and third-party behaviors, an implementation of the EUI repository in the MySQL database, and we're supporting or intending to support fully green button connect my data as well as download my data within this implementation. The release plan, as I mentioned before, looking for a beta release in June, beta 2 in August, milestone 1, version 1 release in September, October, and then finally full release in November of this year. The JavaSpring implementation has interactive interfaces. It's a model view controller implementation. It gives you third-party as well as data custodian management interfaces. And in the middle here, you'll see a parsing of the data flow that's going all the way from a download my data file coming through the data custodian, through the third party, and back out to, in this case, a command line stream. So I'm using curl, a command line URL interface on Unix or Linux, to access, although I know this is very hard to read, to access application Atom XML from a third party, and requesting that I download or access a download my data representation or XML file. One of the files that Marty spoke about before at the green button data.org site. So implementation of this is within the Spring tool suite or the Eclipse interactive development environment. We have the data custodian, the third party, and at this implementation we're running on a customization of the Apache Tomcat server. The data custodians are there. If I list the data custodians, you'll see them that I have kind of a default data custodian sitting here, and same with third parties, etc. The management interface I have here is fairly low level, intended not particularly for the a deployable usage into a service provider, but as a starting point for anyone who wishes to customize this interface into a further development. This particular server is running on my local host. If I actually wanted to do one of the interfaces that are under test right now, we have interfaces that are inserting download my data into a data custodian or into a third party. These would be used in the case where I have a customer that has used download my data and a service provider that wishes to be a third party that wants to grab or allow the customer to upload that file then into their service. There's also a simple upload my data back in, and then finally the one that I'll show you right now, which is the full data path between a third party requesting, in this case, 12-month utility data to be accessed through the data custodian. So what's happening here is that I'm requesting the third party to test the data flow end to end, all the way from the file system through a data custodian, back between the data custodian and the third party, and back through to the initial RESTful requester. So that basically gives the representation of the 12-month data, with some differences at this point that are syntactically appropriate, but not exactly the same as the original data file, in particular in the namespace. If you look at the data file, it will have a little bit different representation of the namespaces. But as a summary, we are at the level of inputting the data, representing it, and coming across. Oops, I'm going to go down to this slide. As I mentioned, we are working with the JavaSpring implementation with the MySQL database. This is a high-level depiction of the schema for that database, color-coded to identify in the green the actor-level entities in the database, the data custodians, realizing these are too small to read in this slide, but at the color-coded, the actor level, the exposed resources in blue, the typing system in orange, and down here in purple and red, some entities that seem to have not found a home yet in the implementation. I suspect that in the end we will be hooking those in the right spot. I wanted to show you this in the zoomed out form, but we're using the MySQL Workbench to review the modeling, and here I think you'll be able to see it's a little bit more visible in terms of the data custodian and its entity representation. This particular implementation is somewhat controversial, I'd say. Whether we stick with this or not through a scalable implementation, I think we need to decide that. But you can see that identified object, which is the inherited entity for all exposed resources within the ESPI standard, is the workhorse entity within this implementation. And so all of the exposed resources are identified here with respect to first a data type. So this might be an interval block, this might be a meter reading, etc. And then the actual contents are relevant with respect to that data type. And then I mentioned the typing system, which is uniformly described out here. For example, if we look at the currency, we'll see that currency has a mapped value, and this allows us to generically have all of the enums within the implementation readily available. So this particular schema representation will be available also in the repository on GitHub, and the MySQL Workbench is available to download in this link. So that's the status of JavaSpring. We hope within the next 2 weeks to be getting this up on a server that's available broadly.